Welcome to Transformation Heroes by Fedia. Companies are the greatest platform of change, and we are looking in this series to dedicate to the professionals that are looking to make the biggest impact and want to grow their customer base. We'll be exploring topics like AI, LLM, security challenges, hiring, CRM, and much, much more. And the series, Transformation Heroes, will be able to hopefully guide you through this as our expertise is focused on customer experience. We look forward to you joining us, and thank you so much.
Hello and welcome to another episode of Transformation Heroes. Once again, joined by François. Hello, François.
Hello, Carlos. Good to be back and looking forward to this new episode.
Great to be back. Absolutely. So today we're going to be covering and understanding the technology behind text analysis, specifically for CX professionals. Let's jump in as always. Firstly, François, could you maybe describe to me a little bit about natural language processing, often referred to as NLP?
Yeah, sure. So NLP, first of all, let's start with a little bit of the boring history, but it's been there for a while. It's been there since the 50s, so almost, more than 70 years. And NLP is everything about understanding, interpreting, and generating human language. And of course, we have very recent updates about NLP, which we'll discuss a lot in this episode. But at the very beginning, I think what's interesting when we mention NLP, which is a very technical term, is to keep in mind that it's a field of AI, and it's also one that is very close to the first, test regarding whether if the AI is good or not, which is a Turing test, which was created in the 50s, which basically says if you are talking to, if you don't know if you're talking to AI or a human, the AI has passed the Turing test. And it's interesting because it was a very big thing until like 2 years ago. And then ChatGPT just completely destroyed the test. And now, everyone can run an AI on whatever smartphone or, your computer that would, pass the Turing test. But it's really about understanding, interpreting, generating human language.
So jumping into the historical side, because I think that's really interesting. You mentioned Turing test, which is named after Alan Turing, the famous person that, alongside his team, cracked the Enigma code during World War II. So I love that it's honored after him, because him and his team did a lot. And being a Brit, it was something that we learn about. Just going into the history a little bit, because I'd love to understand a little bit more about, you mentioned 70 years where we've been using NLP. And I've only heard about...
It was more of a research thing, I think, for a long time until the business world. And at the very beginning, it was, so it went from theory to a lot of math to, I think, machine learning, which was a very big thing. And it started, we feel like it's been there for 5 or 6 years, but actually they started doing NLP projects, in research with machine learning in the 90s. So it's still pretty old. And the very, I would say, game changer, which we all know, was the so-called transformers era, which is basically a new infrastructure for deep learning, which transformed a lot and improved by 100-fold the NLP performance. So, NLP means a lot of application, which we'll discuss, but the transformers era was a big game changer. And it was around 2018, so not that far away.
Would that involve large language models as well? Is that part of
No, that's after. It's,
okay.
First of all, there was the transformers, and that's where you have models. Again, the goal is to go a little bit technical without being too technical, but that's where you have models from Meta, from Google, which, for example, there's one that's very known for NLP, which was used before LLMs, which was called BERT. Which was used a lot, and it was, it was just basically being used for entity recognition when you're analyzing text, but also sentiment analysis, these kind of things. And that's why, as a CX professional or someone that's analyzing customer feedback and, trying to improve, transform your business, you probably have been using NLP for a long time. and it just got better and better and better. But the key technological breakthrough is the Transformers era, which was 2018, and then there was like kind of like the application that we all know, which was ChatGPT 3, which happened in 2023. I mean, that's the moment where it became famous. And like it just got better and better and better. But there was really like a couple of phases, and what drastically improved was the performance and the level of reliability of these models.
Okay. Thank you. That was a very detailed history and something I didn't know. I learned a lot in these episodes. So as a novice,
That's the point, isn't it?
what was that?
It's a point, right? Isn't it?
Absolutely. So we've talked a little bit about ChatGPT. We talked a little bit about the different applications of NLP. Are there any other use cases maybe that you'd like to share?
Yeah, there's a lot of them, and it's interesting because we before we're going to dive, I think, after more into the CX job and like into what does it take to improve your company, and how can NLP help you? But I think like when you're using Google Translate, you are using NLP, and you've been using NLP for a while. When you are doing like speech recognition, it's NLP as well. When you're doing like again, sentiment analysis, that's a very common use case. That's NLP. And when you're using ChatGPT, that's NLP as well. So you got NLP pretty much everywhere, and even in your smartphone, right? Like you're using it on a daily basis. So yeah, these are some of the use cases, like chatbots as well. Like these are and have been NLP use cases for quite some time.
Okay, and so for a CX professional, what's the kind of business value to be received? I know you mentioned chatbots. Is there anything specific that a CX professional would need to know and understand?
Well, I think from a support standpoint, chatbots, like that's very easy to see the value. From again, like if we narrow it down to like a CX person that's like they want to analyze his customer feedback, find insights, and improve his company at the operational level or basically at any level. Like you want to focus on sentiment analysis, you want to focus on topic detection. So basically making sure you can figure out when you're analyzing like thousands of feedback or product reviews, like what are the key trends, what are the key topics, and NLP is very, very powerful for this. So these are two examples. There is a third one, which is a little bit less known, but still very valuable. It's the idea of taking personal data out of the text, basically, when you're analyzing it. So for example, like personal name, ID, emails, and so on. You can also use NLP to capture this information and replace it. So these are some of the use cases for a CX professional, or again, like someone looking to improve a product or services that are very, very valuable today.
Okay, so the idea is especially talking about the last topics, that was really interesting about bringing out information from text. As the idea is you would be able to extract that information and then use that as another form of analysis alongside your text.
Yeah, exactly. So you don't you don't compromise any of your customers' data. And of course, then like the business value, it's really simple to measure, and it might sound surprising, but just like you take the amount of time where you doing like analysis manually, and NLP is going to help you a lot, and it's very easy to measure because you just have to compare what like how long does it take you to analyze 1,000 for example customer feedback or user feedback, and then the machine is going to do it in a couple of minutes or in a couple of seconds. And if you were to analyze 1,000 feedback, like it would take you probably about like between 20 and 30 minutes between the reading times, the analyzing time, and then even if you've done all of this, you still need to present the results and to convince other people to act.
I mean, it might take you like 20 to 30 minutes to read 1,000 feedback, François, but I think it'd take me a lot longer.
Yeah, but that's exactly, where the business value is. And again, like when talking about like improving product or services, like you want to understand exactly what's going on. And it's very hard to do at scale when you have like thousands or millions of customers. And we often mention, like surveys being one of the sources, but again, like you have your product reviews, you have like support tickets, like all of that information at the end of the day is text, right? So that's why like NLP means, like it's very valuable because you can capitalize on all that text that exists, and find valuable insight and save a lot of time. So this is where the business value is, Carlos, to answer your question.
Thank you. Now, I'd love to dive into the technology side of things. So obviously, with ChatGPT and other advanced models, it's been described as revolutionary for the whole area of text analysis. So it'd be great to understand a little bit more about how models like ChatGPT can enhance customer service or automate parts of the CX process.
Yeah. So again, what's interesting is the use cases, at least from a CX standpoint, the use cases they are solving are not necessarily new, or at least on the analysis part. So again, like sentiment analysis, you could do that with AWS, or Amazon Web Services, for a long time, probably like more than 10 years. But it used to be just about like product reviews, and Amazon product reviews. So if you're running a consulting firm, so if you're selling software, or if you're selling anything that is not on Amazon, like basically their sentiment analysis model, which was trained on their product reviews, basically, and they have millions of them, is not going to be very valuable because just, like it wasn't designed for your use case. So you had just another option, which was to say, okay, let me train my own model with my own data. And this was very, very, very expensive. Was like right now, the GPT era is a very much of a game changer because now you can have very precise results that are using your real-time data without spending, that much money on this. And I think so. This is very much to answer your question, Carlos. It's very much two dimension. There's the first dimension, which is about like the precision, basically, of the results, and therefore, or you can act on them as a professional in your day-to-day job. And then there's that idea of cost, which also is very important because like usually people that are either in CX teams or like trying to improve their product or services, they don't necessarily have that much of they don't have a marketing $1 million budget. They don't have a team of 60 people in most cases. So you have to do a lot with very little resources, right? And again, like thanks to this new technology, like this can be done at scale.
Yeah. Now I'm going to get even deeper. I've heard engineers in our team, talk about vector embedding and talking about analyzing unstructured data through it. And there's other technologies like RAG, which is retrieval-augmented generation, and that's another way of understanding insights through the extraction. Please help break this down for me because for me they're just really complicated terms, and I'd love to know practically why is it important for a CX professional.
Yeah, sure. So let's start with the first one, Carlos. So vector embedding, again, it's interesting because now like everyone using ChatGPT, but from a CX standpoint, from a customer experience standpoint, like there's very common point between what you're doing when you're typing in ChatGPT and what you're trying to do when you're analyzing like hundreds of customer feedback. And one of them is you want to understand the meaning behind every sentence, behind every product review, every Google review, every Trustpilot review. And what basically vector embeddings will do is they're going to take your text, your piece of text, into a couple of vectors. So I'm not going to enter into the mathematical details because that's not really the point at all. But basically, it's going to be a mathematical vector that is going to be a pretty large one. So if, for example, if you say A Carlos, like A Carlos is going to be in one or two vectors of 1,536 dimensions. So not one dimension or two dimension like the one you used to do in school, but 1,536. So
Wow.
in that vector, you're going to have the similarity. It's going to be used to calculate the similarity between different vectors. And therefore, if a model has been trained with, a lot, and usually they train with like billions of text feed, it's not just text feedback, but of text, they are turned into an embeddings. and then you're using it to compare the different similarities between like what you're typing or what your customers are saying, and what the model has been trained on. And what's interesting is in this pretty large vector, like 1,536 dimensions, so pretty large, you're going to have the language that's being used, you're going to have the tone, the emotion, like all of this can be captured with numbers inside this vector. And that's very interesting because it means that the level of analysis can be a lot deeper and a lot closer to what a human would understand. So if you say, like, hey, Carlos, how are you doing? And I'm, like, if I'm saying this to you, like, the way I'm saying it to you, the tone, like all of this is, like your brain is capturing this, and the vectorial embedding, it's not as
It's
good as a
almost
human brain, of
mimicking
course.
your brain neurons.
Yeah, exactly. It's basically like capturing as much information as possible. So when it's going to do similarity, so for example, then if you want to do like topic recognition, it's going to not only look at the word itself, but also the meaning, the language, and so on. And so, for example, if you were to create, which, like we do a lot with some of our clients, for example, if you want to look for ideas of improvements, well, like if a Google review doesn't say idea of improvements, but it's similar, if you compare the vectors, if it's similar to other ideas of improvements, well, then, like it's going to match. And this is very, very, very powerful. Is the first one more clear, Carlos?
That makes a lot more sense. I think if I think of it like the 1,000, how many thousands of vectors were there again?
1,536. At least it's for GPT. Like some of the models have other vectorial embeddings, but like at least for LLM right now, so for large language model, like again, it's going to change, but that was kind of like the default embedding size. And to answer your second question, Carlos, regarding what has been known in text analysis as well, or at least, it's not just in text analysis. You've heard it in other places. It's RAG, so Retrieval-Augmented Generation, and this is basically a technique that's very powerful because it helps you have personalized results. So using your own data without having to fine-tune a model. So if you want the model to have, so let's say we need to analyze like 5,000 customer feedback, and we're looking for the top best idea for improvements. There are kind of like two ways to do this. Either you take a model and you fine tune it. So it means you you hire a team basically, or use a software where you're going to label every feedback, or at least enough for the model to learn, and you can say like, this is a good example, it's a bad example, it's a good example, it's a bad example.
Like the thumbs up, thumbs down kind of thing. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And then you're going to fine tune it, and then you can use the model, which we call inference. Like you can use inference you can do inference with the model, and it's going to be very performance. But the problem is, like whenever you have new data, you need to reuse, you need to retrain the model. Whereas like if you're doing retrieval-augmented generation, you are using a like generic model. So LLM could be ChatGPT, could be Mistral, but you're using a large language model, and then you're using a retrieval technology to input to the model your own data in real time using vector embedding, just to add another level of complexity. So let's say if you look at the use cases that we've just discussed, like the way you would do it is you would take your 5,000 customer feedback or product reviews, Trustpilot reviews, whatever, and then you would find the one that looks like ideas of improvements based on the similarity, as we've just discussed before. You would take the top, let's say 20, and then you would send them to the LLM. And then the LLM would not, you would not use data from other sources. You would just use the data that you send it, because you would say like, hey, don't use elsewhere. I'm sending you data. Can you do, for example, a sentiment analysis, like find the best topics in these improvement ideas? And then it's very powerful because it uses real-time data. You have no cost for fine-tuning. And also, like it's pretty easy to maintain as well.
So that's where the results come from then. It comes directly from your input, and then you can
Yeah,
then take
it comes from
from.
your retrieval. It comes from your retrieval storage. And I mentioned, like one we know a lot at Feature, which is feedback analysis. But another one could be, for example, for knowledge base, like a lot of customer support products right now. They're using Retrieval-Augmented generation, so they have like their own version of ChatGPT in their product, which is going to read and retrieve information in your own knowledge base, right? In your own articles, and then it's going to make a response based on this. Like this is a very classical, easy to understand example of Retrieval-Augmented generation. Like I'm making a prompt, like, how can I solve this problem? And then it's going to look into the articles, and then it's going to send this to a LLM and give me an answer.
Okay. And I think this kind of brings me to my next point, which is about fine tuning these models. Because obviously it's great to have that and have that set up, but with time and the way that technology is developing, customer language might change, trends might evolve. How can we ensure that the fine tuning aspect remains accessible for six professionals?
Well, that's why fine tuning is not necessarily the best option.
Okay, interesting.
And like you don't have again, like you can do RAG, so Retrieval-Augmented generation. You don't have to do fine tuning.
Right.
Fine tuning, if you do a lot of volume, and you need very precise and you need a lot of control on the results, like fine tuning is the way to go. But again, like if you look at the CX use cases, or at least the one, again, looking at the use cases of how do I understand what my customers are saying and how do I make improvements, fine tuning doesn't really make sense, because the problem if you do this is the customer feedback is always going to evolve over time. And that means whenever you run an improvement, you would basically have to refine tune the model, right? So
So
there is
sorry to interrupt there, just using RAG, so retrieval augmented generation, how would that differ in terms of, over time, in terms of inputting the feedback? It's running always in real time. It's always able to adapt.
Yeah, it's always retrieving based on your retrieval system. So for example, again, I'll give you the use case that we have at Feature, which is basically we have the customer feedback in real time. It's being enriched with some other sources like a Salesforce and so on. And then we store it into your retrieval system, right? Which is a vectorial database. And then whenever one of our customers is going to say like, okay, I want to find 5 improvements based on this specific product. Well, then we can retrieve that information, ordered by date. So ideally, you get up-to-date information, and then you input it into the LLM to get very precise results. Whereas, like if you were to do fine tuning, you would have to do it, and you would have to refresh the data quite a lot, actually. And the good news with Retrieval-Augmented generation as well is you can input feedback to the model, so you can say like these are good examples, these are bad examples, and therefore you have even more precise results.
Okay, that makes a lot of sense. One last thing on this subject, if I may. So we have natural language processing. We also have natural language understanding.
Yeah.
Help me understand the difference, please.
Okay, so it's very simple. NLP is natural language processing. NLU is natural language understanding, which is if you, at the beginning, we had the definition of NLP, which was there was the understanding, interpreting, and then there was a generation, which was kind of like the 3 pieces of NLP. NLU is just a subset of NLP. It's very that simple.
Okay, right. It's just like the part of the understanding process. Okay.
Yeah, exactly. And again, like when you do, just to give you a very simple example, again, like topic recognition could be part of the understanding, or even the sentiment part could be part of the understanding as well, right? So if you're trying to do like sentiment analysis, for example, on a customer support call, this is natural language understanding.
Okay, makes sense. All right. Well, now I feel I know how I would like to measure my customer experience. I choose RAG. Now that I've chosen RAG, how do I go about deploying? Because a traditional model, if you look at the large, multi-billion-dollar industries that are existing at the moment, it costs quite a lot. It's quite complex to roll out. So I'd love to know a little bit about, the risks that businesses should be aware of, and how we can potentially find those benefits within that.
Yeah. So the benefit that we've mentioned, Carlos, at the beginning, like they're very, they're very sexy. Like you want to go after them. Like you want to save a lot of hours every single week. Like that sounds pretty appealing. You businesses, they have three ways to go about it, or CXM. They either have a very good, inexpensive inside team. They can do this. So that means you have a data scientist that can retrieve the data. You have a data lake internally, and you have some people that can build the whole pipeline, I would say, to take the customer feedback from all the sources, like analyze them, and then when it's done, store them, and then having an interface somewhere, an internal tool basically that would let you access this information and solve the problem you're trying to solve. So whether that's, again, like could be improvement plan, could be action plan, could be building automated reports on a regular basis. And that's the first way to go about it, which is basically like you do it yourself inside the company, and it's going to take a lot of time. And the problem with this as well is you are going to be a little bit stuck when it's done, because when you're done V1, the problem is this model that change a lot. You're going to have new sources of feedback. You're going to have new systems as well, and it's going to be pretty costly to
you're
to maintain it.
you're almost developing a product like next
Exactly.
to your main business. Yeah.
And if this is not your core business, like this is usually what companies do not do, because simply, as we've mentioned, like this is not their core business. Second way is, like you outsource it to a consulting firm. They will do this for you. But there is a couple of risks. First of all, it's usually very expensive, and more expensive than option one, by the way, because it's the same as option one, but it's not as a company, so they're going to add their margin. And also there is a challenge of security, I would say, because you're basically taking all your customer feedback, so intellectual property that belongs to your business, and that is pretty cool. And then you're going to outsource it. And then there's a third way, which is kind of like, again, like the way we do it at Figure, but we're not the only one, is basically having a software to do that for you, that you can run in a very secure environment where you are in control of everything. But like it's their role to maintain it, to update it, to stay up to date, and also you benefit from a very good price to value ratio, simply because as they do this at scale, and again, like Figure being a very good example, we do this for a lot of customers. So when we do an improvement for one, benefits everyone. And also we have agreement with the LLM providers, which means we can also lower the cost internally, but also for our clients. And I think this is kind of like this third option is the one that's going to scale the most. But again, like if you are a 20 billion company, maybe option one makes more sense. But if you are like, again, like from 100 people to a couple of thousands, like you probably don't want to do this inside your organization.
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense. And I mean, not only do you get that powerful text analysis data, but you also get a CS team next to you to help.
You got people which are experts.
You have nice aspects as well added on, plus also the idea of centralization, etc. So, okay. Going into maybe the third point a little bit further, we talked about it a little bit with technology constantly evolving. From your opinion, how does a customer intelligence platform continue to update and retrain models? Is there, how can you give CX professionals the idea that you're going to be leading rather than lagging in terms of what's being rolled out?
Yeah, well, I think there's accountability to be developed, meaning like the good news as well with these models and NLP in general is you can track performance over time. Like you can see again, like taking like the use cases that we know and that we've discussed at Figure, which is again sentiment analysis, like topic detection, like generating automatically action plans. Like these are some of the key NLP use cases that we deal with like on a daily basis, and it's pretty straightforward to measure the performance. So meaning, like if people are going to use them, like you're probably doing a good job if they use it a lot. If they're going to run it again, like probably you didn't do a good job. And I think like this can be tracked, this can be shared, and it can be improved. And I think this is the good news. And also, if you look at what we are doing, but other softwares are doing, like even like a lot of, like AI agents or customer support tools, which are more going to be not in our scope, but more like replying automatically to customers and so on. Like they are multimodal, which means at any given time, you can change from one LLM to another based on their performance, their cost, and so on. And this is very good news from CX Professional because they don't have to deal with this. They don't have to deal with, like what's the model, what's the vectorial storage that you're using, like everything that we've discussed. They don't necessarily have to deal with this. It's good to understand it, and that's why we're doing this podcast. But the point is, like it can work in a black box, basically.
Mm. And I love the idea of you mentioned accountability. I think there's also a level of collaboration that's needed
Yeah.
with CX professionals, because the idea is you can hopefully gather the results as a CX professional saying, okay, these are the actions I need to take. Hopefully you can roll those out within your business over, 1 month, 3 months, 6 months time, come back to your intelligence platform and see, okay, am I still seeing the same issues? Am I now seeing new issues? Am I seeing positives from the things I've done? So I love that.
Yeah, no, exactly. And that's why tracking it over time makes a lot of sense. And that's why, like, again, another point which I didn't mention is, but when we're talking about black box, what's interesting when you're using or you're using a software that use RAG, basically, so Retrieval-Augmented Generation, is exactly where the result is coming from. You don't know the results ahead of time, but and you can know, for example, for every single improvement plan, like what are the reviews, pieces of customer feedback, like tickets that are behind this, because it's an input that you're sending. So and that's very interesting, because if you want to gain trust and to convince other people to say like, hey, we have, like 100 customers that mention that we have a problem with our delivery in this specific city, for example, or with a specific partner, like you have, like very black and white product reviews or verbatims that say exactly what's behind these inputs. And I think it's, like when it comes to how long does it take to go from, hey, I'm doing NLP, so I'm understanding and I'm saving a lot of time into understanding what my customers are saying, into action. Like this is very valuable because, like on the ground, like you go a lot faster if you know exactly what are the improvement plan, that it's very up to date, and then that you know exactly where it's coming from.
Lovely. Well, François, that covers my question. Do you have anything else you'd like to add that we maybe haven't touched
No,
on?
I think we could talk about this for hours, but I think like the goal is not to to be too technical calls, but just, and again, like most of this is pretty transparent when you're choosing a solution, or even if you're doing it with consultants, like you don't have to know all the details, but it's still interesting to know. If you're curious, it's still interesting to know what's behind. And again, like we're doing it as a business value, but there's a lot in terms of research as well, which we didn't touch on today.
Not yet. Maybe
Not yet.
one day. Lovely. Well, thanks,
Thanks,
François.
Carlos.
Thanks for your time.